You've all joined us. Welcome to Madeline Island School of the Arts. This is a live free webinar with our friend Gloria Loughman. Gloria is a friend of ours. She's taught with us in the past, and she is scheduled to teach with us in a workshop, Landscape Collage, which you can see in the behind her, May 6th to May 10th in Santa Fe. We're also going to be joining us in Bar Harbor this fall, September 30th to October 4th. Before I introduce Gloria to you all, which I'm sure you all are familiar with Gloria, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Annie Meach-Sumner. I'm the Director of Operations. I may have met some of you already. I run the operations on our campuses in Tucson, in Santa Fe, as well as in Bar Harbor. I'm lucky enough to spend time as well on our flagship campus on Madeline Island School of the Arts in the summertime. We are known as one of the top ranked art schools in the nation, doing all four things, all four genres, quilting, writing, painting, and photography. We are known for our flagship campus on Madeline Island, obviously, for our fabulous campus and gourmet meals. Tucson, we are there in January, and it's a fabulous, wonderful time, as some of you from Arizona can justify that it's a great time to be down there with the weather. It's not too hot, not too cold. Another fabulous location that we have a campus on is in Santa Fe, where Gloria has been with us before and is joining us again this year. Santa Fe is super and a wonderful spot for artists to be creative. There's so much inspiration around Santa Fe, whether it's the colors, the day, what the clouds look like, the sky, the color of the adobe buildings, the turquoise doors, the red chili peppers. It's just it's awe-inspiring, and it's just sort of just a wonderful spot to be in and spend a 5-day work retreat, as well as our Bar Harbor location that we've just added. Bar Harbor is located up in the northern part of Maine, and Gloria is going to be there in September, right when leaf peeping is happening. So the colors of the landscape in Bar Harbor, Maine will be outstanding, and that is something that we're going to go into, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Gloria. Do feel free to ask questions in the chat box as Gloria goes through her presentation. We'll go ahead and get those questions answered either virtually or in person. And I am going to let you guys know that this has been recorded. So if you do have to leave halfway through, don't worry, we'll record it and we will be sending out the link to all of those that have registered. Now, without further ado, let me introduce Gloria Loughman, joining us from Drysdale in Victoria, Australia. Take it away, Gloria.
Thank you, Annie. I'm just going to share my screen now and we'll make a start. Okay, so this is a photo that I took recently when I was lucky enough to teach at a retreat at Uluru at Ayers Rock. So in this session today, I'm going to just give you a little bit of background information, show you some images of my studio, and then talk about the technique that I'll be teaching in Santa Fe. So here we go. I am married with 3 lovely daughters. This photo was only taken about 3 or 4 weeks ago on the occasion of my husband Tony's 80th birthday. So it was so lovely to be together, and we had a huge party for him, which was just wonderful. We actually have 9 grandchildren, and you can see images of them there. They're very special to us, and they're all growing up very, very quickly. So we live on the Bellarine Peninsula. We're about an hour and a half south of Melbourne. We've been living here for approximately 15 years. Before that, we lived in a small country town right up on the close to the Murray River, called Kerrang, and it was there that I started doing patchwork and quilting while I was in the recovery stage of having breast cancer and chemotherapy, etc. And I joined the guild up in Kerrang, more for the fun and the friendship than the quilting, but it was a wonderful time learning all these new skills. So, because we live on the coast and my husband Tony is a very keen photographer, we do have lots of images of the coastal scenery around us. We're actually facing west. We look over the bay, so we get some amazing sunsets. So, never short of inspiration or images to use in my quilting. This is the house that we built 15 years ago. And on that bottom level is my studio. And it's quite a big, large room. And I kept asking the architect to push the walls out further because I thought perhaps, seeing we are living at the beach, I might teach some classes from home. So inside the studio, polished concrete floor, which is lovely. I can paint, I can dye fabric, and it's very easy to clean up. But these are the only students I've actually had in my studio. So my husband tells people I got it under false pretenses, but I managed to fill it all up, and I do love to travel. So, and it was hard in COVID times when I didn't actually get to work with students in person. For me, that's the best part about teaching. So I do sew on a Benina sewing machine. You can see there I've got my machine and my Q20 Benina there, and some work in progress. Where that green quilt is hanging is actually my design wall that I'm sitting in front of now. So you can picture me in the corner of the studio there. I love quilting on my Q20, but can you see the glass of wine that is on the image on the right-hand side? So somewhere in the world, it's 5 o'clock, and I'm sure my skills improved dramatically after partaking. So just behind me here, I have a wet area, a dedicated wet area. So I'm very spoiled. All of the mess stays in the studio, and the lounge room and family area is sort of upstairs to where I'm sitting at the moment. I do have a dedicated washing machine down here, so I'm not dragging all the wet fabric through the house as I'm doing the washing process. So often it looks like this, with jars of dye and boxes with fabric in and things everywhere, rather than that last slide. So I do love to dye fabric, and it's always a wonderful adventure, wondering what the fabric's going to look like when you pull it out. So I don't sell the fabric online, but I do take it to classes. So I'm dyeing fabric for myself, and I'm taking a stack of hand-dyed fabric to classes for students. So there's always washing and ironing on the go when I'm preparing these beautiful fabrics. And there's a big stack there in the top left-hand corner of fabric, all ironed and ready to go to take to class. As well as painting fabric, as well as dyeing fabric, I also paint fabric. And to paint the fabric, I'm using a transparent fabric paint. I'm wetting the fabric, and really the first layer as I'm putting it on is more like painting a house. And I do encourage students to paint in class, unless it's a very short class, of a day. Then I'm getting students to paint in class as well. And just recently, a class that I taught, one of the students at the end said she'd never been brave enough to paint on fabric, and really it was like kindergarten. So it was fabulous. So it's something that I really encourage my students to have a go, to create their own unique fabrics. This is a great fabric, and it is unique because it actually started raining while it was drying outside. So never to be repeated, that one. But when I paint fabric, nearly always I cut it up. So you can see this quilt of Ayers Rock. I painted 2 or 3 pieces of fabric in similar colors for the background, and then I've cut it up and rearranged the strips. And it's something that I do in my own work a lot. Here's another one that I've cut up and I've inserted. So all the fabric in the background there was painted, and then the foreground fabrics were dyed, plus a few commercial fabrics have been popped in there as well. As well as painting white fabric, I also overpaint commercial fabrics. So the next few slides are of a new class, a new workshop that I will be offering in a few months' time. But you can see there that the patterns are coming through from the commercial fabrics, and there's a close-up. So a lot of the techniques that I'm showing you here will be in the landscape collage classes. You can see that I like to collage the foliage on trees, etc. Here's another one with the over-painted fabric in the background and over-painted white fabric in the foreground, and a close-up showing the patterns of the commercial fabrics coming through. And this is something that we do in the collage class to actually expand our range of fabrics. We overpaint white fabrics that have a black pattern on or a dark pattern, so that we might be working in blues, or in this case, yellow to blue. So we can overpaint commercial fabrics to increase our palette or the range of fabrics that we have available. And a third one as well. Each 2 years, I teach at a retreat at Uluru in the centre of Australia. So I think I've made quilts of about Uluru or the Olgas. I think I've got about 10 now. So landscape collage. Like everybody in the world, we had limitations on travel during COVID times. And it was a big shock to me to have to cancel all my classes, the overseas travel part. In fact, I was at Melbourne Airport waiting in the lounge. I checked in, I was all ready to fly over to the US when that conference was cancelled. And then I had to get myself out of the airport, which was actually much harder than getting in, I might tell you. But then I had this period of time at home, which I hadn't had for a long time. And it gave me time to experiment and to play and to not be worried about making class samples or making samples for books or writing books, whatever, but just to have that downtime. And this was the first quilt that I made during COVID times. And in the past, I've made a lot of quilts that have the rectangles or squares or diamonds that I fuse on the surface in a regular pattern. But with this, I wanted to just cut various size rectangles, and instead of leaving a gap, I was going to collage them, to overlap them and to build up that background. And you can see from that photo on the right-hand side there, some of the fabrics were white fabrics that I painted, some were sponged, and some of them were commercial fabrics that you can see the pattern still peeping through there because they're painted with a transparent paint. So this was the second one that I did. And on the right-hand side there, you can see I've even used the label on the side of the fabrics there when I overpainted. And so you would be familiar with, there's quite a few Marcia Durst fabrics in there and other pattern fabrics, as well as my own painted and hand-dyed fabrics. And so in the collage class, we do this very close to the beginning of class. We are overpainting commercial fabrics as well as using our own painted fabrics. This was, I think, the third quilt I made using this technique. And I was fortunate at the end of COVID, I entered this quilt in a major quilt show in Australia and received quite a prestigious award for it. But once again, it is the collage technique. I thought I had a close-up there, but it's obviously the one on the right-hand side. The trees are painted and the fabrics are over-painted. This is the quilt that's hanging behind me. Now, you might think that it's hanging upside down. Indeed, a lot of people do, but it's actually a reflection. So it's called Reflecting the Kimberleys, which is an area right up the top of Australia, and these beautiful boab trees grow up there. And I had an image that of just a reflection of part of a tree, and I sort of, then drew it out and made it my own by increasing the reflection so I could see the whole trees. And just those rocks at the top are out of the water. So it's virtually like a big body of water reflecting the trees with the rocks just peeping out of the top. So there's a close-up. The trees are painted and the collaged areas there built up the same way. And then you can see the rocks. I've used hand-dyed fabric to create the rocks, very carefully cutting them out so that the areas of light are positioned so as if the sun's just catching the top of them there. There's another close-up. And you can see all those commercial fabrics that are in there, all those beautiful patterns that I'm taking advantage of in the water. I did paint the trees, and it took me a while to decide what colour, because in actual fact the trees are boring grey. Beautiful shapes, but boring grey. And but I painted mine in much more sort of likable colours that went with the colours of the quilt. So at the end of COVID, we managed to get away on a camping trip, and we love to go out back. And we managed to get through some border checkpoints, and we went right up the top of Australia to Coolpin Gorge, which is in Kakadu. And only a few vehicles are allowed in here at a time, and we camped there for a few days with friends. When I got home, I decided I'd like to make a quilt about Coolpin Gorge. And so here I am starting the process. You can see that I'm not very good at drawing. There's my pattern there on the left-hand side, pretty basic. And here's a group of fabrics that I've collected together and ready to overpaint, because I think the textures are like the rock walls. I then cut out stacks of rectangles, all different sizes rectangles, and then I'm building up that rock wall there on the right-hand side. I'm then positioning it on a piece of white fabric. So as I'm building it up, I'm fusing it to the white fabric underneath. To help me go straight, I've drilled a little bit of a grid on that background fabric. You can see here some of the fabrics, wonderful textured fabrics I've found that I've then overpainted. And this collection of fabrics is for the water. And gradually I made the wall of the gorge, and I made the water. They're just separate pieces at the moment. And then I added the quilting, even while they were still separate. Then it was time to build up the tree. So I've got my tree there cut out of a white batik fabric, and I've overpainted it, of course. And then I tried all different options for the foliage, but I stuck with the geometric shape. So I felt that was the best option, and it sort of portrayed a feeling of the gum trees there. Gradually, I've got that together. You can see there those strips as I've joined the two sections, and I joined the backing first, butting up the batting together, and then I joined the backing fabric, and then usually the join on the front, I've worked it out so I can put some rocks or an area of sand or water over the top. And because I work with in smaller sections when I'm quilting, I can maintain a much better sort of skill level, a much better output in the end. Then it's time to add all the different foliage on the surface there. And then that reflection. So I needed to get that accurate. So I did a pattern out of freezer paper, and there it is. I painted in that reflection. So in classes, I do bring fabric paints and other ways of marking the surface. And so you can see from that original photo, it's not the same. I tend to not do that in my work. I tend to take the elements, and when we talk about design, we're putting those elements together. And I'm happy if I achieve a feeling of, you know, the essence of the place rather than an actual photograph. So I'm sort of playing around with the components and putting them together to make a pleasing design that that does still feel like the place. This is the most recent quilt for me of the Tathra Wharf. And you can see once again there, and I think I've got a close-up, all the background is collage, so lots of different bits of fabric. So I'm just making it a little bit more abstract. Some other quilts that I made during COVID, it's instead of doing smaller rectangles, for these I'm still collaging, but I'm making longer strips. So in the collage class, I do recommend people doing water using the longer strips to get that feeling of something being horizontal. Here's another one. I do like doing multiple images in one design, and you can see here I've used the longer strips that I've placed horizontally. There's a photo on the left of the Bungle Bungles. It's a national park area right up in the Kimberley, so right up the northwest. If I was to drive there from our house, driving every day, it would take about a week to get there. So it's a very special place with these domes. And it's rough to get in there. You've got to do a couple of creek crossings, but you're rewarded with this incredible scenery when you arrive. So you can see there, I've lots of horizontal strips collaged together on the surface. And often I will add that black graphic line around the outside. Sometimes I do it by placing the shape on a black fabric and then trimming it back to that narrow edge. Or sometimes I just get out my Sharpie and colour it in. Another COVID quilt that I worked on was of a jetty that is nearby where we live. In COVID times, we were only allowed to go a very limited distance from home, and I was so thankful that we lived on the coast. So this is a jetty that's nearby, and you can see I often use an app on my phone called Sketch Guru, and there I have turned that image into a black and white drawing. I can draw trees and hills and things like that, but if I'm not, drawing is not my strength. And so sometimes I will use tools like this to help me get the perspective accurate. Here I am building up the pieces, painting some of the components. You can see there I've used a lot of fusible. I use steamer seam to actually adhere these elements to the background. More fabric painting, and there's a finished quilt. And just another one here. All the techniques that I do are related in that I'm fusing things to the surface on a background. So this is another big quilt that I made before COVID times, where this time I fused the rectangles together with an accurate gap in between, and then fused all these beautiful leaf-like shapes over the top. It represents that area down the coast from where we live, and I used a lot of the plants from my photographs, although people tell me some of them look like marijuana. Not that I would know what that looks like, but you can interpret that any way you like. Another thing we did just recently was that my husband and I collaborated on a book, and I had 6 days of driving home from Kakadu National Park to talk him into this, and the sort of the thing that I think prompted him to agree was that he was able to purchase a lot more photographic equipment. And the first thing we did was that we photographed all of my quilts, which were about 150 for the book. And then we found some of his photographs, and we did it place by place. So I've just got a few to run through that illustrate some of my recent work using the collage technique. This is one of his photos from the Czech Republic, from Prague, and it's an artist installation. It's about global warming, and these penguins are made out of recycled plastic. And there's my version of that scene near the Charles Bridge. I put that little slide there on the left because when I was putting this quilt together, sorry, on the right-hand side, when I was putting it together, I think originally there are 33 penguins, and I had like 12, and I'd lost number 13. I could only fit in 13, and there it was stitched to the back of the quilt. So it took me a while to find it and then to undo it and pop it on the front. There's a chapter on Scotland, and here's some of my quilts that go with Scotland. And so these are the techniques that we'll be doing in class. There's a definite collage quilt on the right-hand side there of the area out in the New Hebrides. There's a chapter on Spain, one on South Korea, a place where I taught for Benina. So it incorporates his photos with my quilts. And in the collage class, often people we'll do a forest or something where the background is all foliage, as you can see there in that quilt on the right-hand side. Another chapter is on Guatemala. We were lucky enough to go there. And for this time, I'm actually collaging on canvas. So I've traced the pattern onto canvas. I'm collaging fabric on top, and then I am filling it in with paint and doing heaps and heaps of stitching. So there is the quilt on the right-hand side there. So it's instead of collaging on white fabric, I'm collaging on canvas. And here's a few more using that same technique. So in Italy, you have the Cinque Terre, the 5 villages there, and there's my version on the right-hand side. Once again, in Italy, in Pisa. And on the right-hand side is the quilt, just in case you were wondering. And you can see there I've collaged a lot of fabrics on the surface there, and then added paint. And there's our book. So self-published, what a big a job that was, and we're very proud of it. And I do bring some of these books to class. It's very expensive for me to post them to you if you don't live in Australia, but I do bring some of these books to class. So when I'm teaching the class, and it's a 5-day class, which is my absolute favourite way to teach, on day one, I introduce the technique, and it's I'll talk about the various elements, and I also talk a lot about colour. And what I encourage people to do in class is to think outside the colour scheme that they've brought there. That's the colour scheme of the image that they've brought to class. So for the first day, I give everybody a pattern. They're allowed to change it a little bit. You can see a couple of different trees in there. We talk about colour, and then everybody makes these small quilts, and we put them up and we talk about it. And invariably, people like someone else's much better than their own. But I find by doing this, it gets people thinking about colour schemes. We talk a lot about perspective, and the good part is they also go home with at least one finished quilt, and then it's time for them to move on to their own design. So people bring their own images, and I do have a few patterns if people are stuck, but people bring their own images. And because everybody working on these small projects finishes at different times, it also allows me to have time with people to help them draw up their own image. So that's day one. Day two, we're often painting fabric. I provide a piece of fabric for the day one class, a piece of hand-dyed fabric that I bring for people. One time I stuck all those fabrics in brown paper bags and just gave them out, and people had to work with the one they were given. But these days I do let people have some choice. So day two, we start painting fabric, as I've said, and then we start talking about the stitching and the doing different techniques on the surface there. And gradually over the week, people will be completing their own major project. So just again to remind you, they're landscape collage classes, and I know Annie might talk about this a little bit more. The first one is coming up in May, and I have been to Santa Fe twice to teach, and I absolutely adore being there. Just the scenery in the national parks around there is so inspiring, but also just being in Santa Fe and all the artists that live and work there, all the galleries that you can visit after class, go for walking at lunchtime and see some of the architecture. And I will, as mentioned there, be teaching this same class at Bar Harbour. So Annie, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now,
I was
and
going to
I
mention
will.
one more thing, Gloria. The sunsets here, just looking at your previous quilts that you were showing before, the sunsets in Santa Fe are inspiring as well. And I remember a lot of your students, not on the tree one, but the first one that you did, the colors were just unbelievable. So that's another wonderful reason to be in Santa Fe in May. The weather is wonderful, and the sunsets are awe-inspiring, looking off into the mountains, into the distance. There was someone had asked a question, but you kind of answered it. You showed us is this book that you produced with Tom? When is that due out? Or it's already?
It's Yeah, it's out already. Because we self-published it, it was a fairly quick process as
Yeah.
far as getting it printed. So we just got a limited number printed, and we still have some. Don't have a lot now because I've been taking them to classes and things, but we still do have some,
And
and
that's
I
your
will be
most
bringing
recent
some.
book. That
Yep.
is your most recent book it's glorious. I
Yes,
saw it
yes,
in
it is.
person when you brought it to Santa Fe.
That's
It's
right.
amazing.
Yes. Yep.
Well, that's wonderful. Are there any questions and answers that we have for Gloria? If you can put them into the chat box. I will say that picture that you showed of all of the step one trees, I have such a vivid memory of it after the first day. And you're right. What's great about that is that everyone has something to bring home with them, a finished piece. Jennifer Sampu was just here with us doing the same thing. She did sort of the high desert hues of the Georgia O'Keeffe country, and had everyone do a small piece to start with, and then they all worked on their larger pieces and ended up taking it home. So I think the class structure, Gloria, is really remarkable how you set it up, and the step-by-step process that I've watched you show your students is incredible. It looks intimidating, but it really was remarkable to see on the wall all of those pieces. And some people just said it was amazing. They were inspired by the people sitting next to them. So it's a remarkable piece of work to see in person as well. Let's see. I was just going to go back to are there any other? Oh, we've got another question here. Oh, someone's saying, thank you for showing your art. Yes, I agree. All of those pieces that you've done in the past that you took pictures for in your book were incredible, Gloria. How many pieces do you think you have?
Well, I think when we got them all out, and considering some have been sold,
Yeah.
I think we photographed 150, but approximately. But that was sort of, I started in about 1990, and I have been teaching since 20. I left school at the end of 2001, and I've been teaching full time quilting since then. And when I go to an event now, I'm almost like the grandmother of the teachers. And so, it's many years of experience there. Also, I was a secondary school teacher, mainly working in special ed. And I like to tell people that because, you can ask me the same question 5 times and it's okay. I get it. So
Oh, well, you know what? I would say, you certainly don't look like you could be any of these instructors' mothers. I think you have fabulous genes. Looking at your children in the first picture, I think you're good to go. I have some questions for you, Gloria. How and where do you store your quilts? The
um, I have them I have them rolled up. The bigger quilts, I have them rolled up, and I make like cloth bags to put them in, and I
Oh,
have them in a big cupboard in our hallway. When the house was being designed, I made sure I had a big area that I could roll them all up in. So the quilt behind me, my husband hung it about 3 minutes before we started, and we just unrolled it and pinned it to the design wall. So I hate to fold them up. I hate even folding them up to put in suitcases. The smaller ones, I just have them lying flat, one on top of another, but anything of size is rolled up round a cardboard roll. Usually it's a roll that I've got fabric in and then stored in the hallway.
um, Charla is asking, do you typically do the background first? And where do you begin? That's a great answer.
Okay, so obviously I begin by doing lots of sketching, and then I do make a full size pattern, and then I am drawing it onto the white background fabric. And the answer is yes, I do create the whole background first, and then I actually quilt it so that then that goes behind the other elements that I'm putting on the surface. So if it's the sky, I'll actually have the sky all quilted before I start adding the foreground, and then it's much easier to manage.
Okay. How about, oh, Gloria, we have all of these people that are sharing their experiences with you. What a nice sentiment, you guys. That's amazing. Such a great teacher and inspiration. I get compliments on my piece all the time. Oh, those are such nice words, you guys. That's wonderful. Charlotte's also asking if you ever use non-traditional quilting fabrics in your work.
I have used silk at various times, and I'm really sort of more about the texture or the pattern that's on the fabric. So it might be furnishing fabric, but basically I'm looking at cotton or silk. So I guess, I'm basically sticking to traditional fabrics, but then I'm having fun with painting them and sponging them and even stamping on them and all sorts of things from there. Yeah.
Someone's asking, how does the back look on the smaller pieces? Are they talking about the tree ones?
I think what the question is when I join the pieces together, if I work on various sections and quilt it, so I butt the batting together first, and then I've just allowed enough backing fabric so that I can turn it and I'll tape the batting together. And then when I turn it to the back, I just tuck in one edge and I hand stitch across to join the backing. And really, you can't tell where it is. The other thing that I do is that I use a lot of our beautiful Australian Aboriginal fabric on the back of my quilts. Nearly every quilt has that fabric on the back, and they're very patterned and colourful, and it's my chance to use them. And so you really can't see where I've joined the sections together. I do it quite neatly. I take my time to make sure it's all lovely and flat.
What threads do you use?
I like that comment then. Busy fabric hides a lot of stuff. I love that. Sorry, what threads?
Yeah.
I'm using a lot of variegated thread on the surface because remember I'm stitching over lots of areas where it's changing colour quite rapidly. I use the Fantastico, the Superior Thread Fantastico that has very short blocks of colour. I think it changes every inch. I'm using some of the Wonderfil threads that are variegated. And on the bobbin, I'm just using a 50 weight Orifil thread on the bobbin. So, and then I'll do bobbin work where I will add extra texture by using maybe an 8 weight pearl thread. But then, of course, I'm sewing upside down. So that's a whole different ball game. Yep.
What's the biggest quilt you've ever made?
Thank heavens, the biggest quilt I have ever made now belongs to the Australian Quilt Museum because it is about 8 or 9 feet across by about 7 foot deep. And I have to change from meters to feet, so it's sort of a bit approximate. And it is really big. And we lived in Kerrang when I made that quilt, and we didn't have a patchwork shop then. So I bought some curtain fabric in the local shop that sold fabric. And so the quilt weighs a ton, as well as being big and heavy, it weighs a ton. And if I was taking that traveling, it would sort of fill the whole suitcase. And when the Australian Quilt Museum approached me about purchasing the quilt, I was delighted to have it in their collection, but also the fact that now they carry it around and they put it up. So that's the biggest one. Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. And for you to do that conversion with jet
Yeah.
lag coming from America just now. I'm quite impressed, Gloria. Someone
Thank
was
you.
asking, if you have a class, you love to teach, you love to travel. Do you teach classes in Australia?
I do. I do.
And where could you find that class schedule?
It'll be on my website. I've got some local classes coming up. I'm teaching at the Australasian Quilt Convention, which is in about 3 or 4 weeks. I'm going to Hobart. I'm going up to Port Douglas, up the top of Queensland,
Oh, wow.
and of course, Uluru. I love teaching at Ayers Rock, but I do. I teach all over the place in Australia. I drag my husband around with me most of the time he comes. We are cutting back. I mean, that's the thing. I'm going to be traveling a lot less. Now I've reached the ancient age of 75. Although I'm still, pretty fit for 75, we are consciously cutting back on classes and travel, especially international travel. So, and then, the studio time. That's what COVID told me, how much I love just being home working in the studio. So I was trying to balance it out a bit. And yes, I will be cutting back.
I know, and that's my biggest fear is that, once you cut back, we're not going to get to see you in person. That was the biggest bright light that came at the end of COVID, was finally getting to put our arms around you and give you a huge hug and say, "Welcome back to the States."
Welcome. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, so again, these are two wonderful opportunities for people to take classes with you in the United States. It sounds like you are in lots of places around Australia. You are still doing some online classes,
Um, y-
or not so
I
much?
do. Yeah. Online is not so much my thing. I love being with people in person.
Yeah,
I have 3 classes on my website that people can purchase and download.
pre-recorded.
But I'm not
Oh,
actually teaching as such online. I sort of made that decision that I love to be with people. And Zoom lectures, that's fine. But not so much actually teaching online. Yeah.
well, I've seen you teach in person, so I can't imagine having you teach me online, because teaching in person is so incredibly one-on-one, and you just learn so much more from being in person with you, Gloria. I have someone asking a question, if you don't mind jumping back to creating quilts. Are you putting fusible on all fabrics before cutting into rectangles?
I am, but I'm not putting a huge amount. Like, I'm not doing yardage of
Yeah.
putting the fusible on the back. I would cut like maybe an 8-inch square of fabric and just put fusible on the back of that, and then I would cut that up. So I'm not preparing heaps of fabric with fusible. I'm just putting fusible on the pieces that I'm pretty confident that I will be cutting up into the rectangles.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing that when you were in the classroom. These are wonderful questions. I think someone had asked if you have any classes in Canada, but I will say not in Canada. Do you have any classes in Canada? I think Bar Harbor's the closest one to Canada.
I'm actually in Canada just before I come to Bar Harbor. I'm on Prince Edward Island.
I can't hear you. My volume's down.
So yeah,
Just
I'm on
kidding,
Prince Edward Island. Yeah, and I'm not that's for a group there. So yeah, yeah. But it was just good to combine that with coming to Bar Harbor when it's such a long way to come.
That's exactly what we like to do for you, Gloria, always.
Yeah,
Like to combine plenty of different trips in the United States so that it just makes one great big trip across the pond.
yeah, yeah.
What is your favorite kind of fusible to use?
I do use the steamer seam 2 light, because I like to be able to place pieces and then hold it up and have a look at it, pin it up on the wall without committing. And if I'm happy, then I iron it. And if not, I just pull it all off and try other combinations. Yep.
Wow, that's wonderful. I'm looking to see, I think everyone has had their answer or questions answered, other than, and everyone enjoyed your presentation. Thank you for sharing your work. A lot of people have taken your classes here, which is wonderful. Come back and take more classes with her. I bet it's just they just can get better and better as they go along. That especially that's what I read in a lot of your evaluations when you taught for us last, is that a lot of people wanted to come back and sort of add on to their skills that they had learned from you, and maybe add different colors or do different things with the landscape. When you worked on canvas, Gloria, do you stretch it over a frame?
No, no.
You do?
I just treat it like a piece of fabric, and the sewing machine just sews through it like butter. And then I'm treating it like a quilt. So I'm ending up with putting a facing on it to. So it's just, instead of the white cotton, I'm using a piece of canvas. Yes.
And what batting do you use?
Usually I'm using cotton or bamboo, something fairly dense and something not very thick. Yes.
That's wonderful. Flora Joy is asking, what percentage of your quilting is straight line?
Oh, percentage, that's hard. Often the backgrounds when I do the collage are straight lines, and I'm doing that with the walking foot on, just to make sure I've got all of those collage pieces down. And then everything on the surface, I'm stitching like freehand. And in class, if people are struggling with the freehand bit, we talk through how to do that, as well as managing it perhaps with a normal foot on. But once I have all the background sort of quilted fairly densely with straight lines, then I'm adding stuff on the surface using the free motion foot.
And do you use that you pretty much only use the free motion foot, correct? If I remember.
Once I get to the surface, yes.
Yes, that's correct.
I've got the quilting foot or the walking foot on for the background, and then I'm using the free motion foot. Yeah.
I remember that. Wonderful. Well, this has been fantastic, Gloria. Thank you. I do want to say, someone's saying, when making show quilts, do you add a layer of wool or polybatten over the cotton fabric to avoid creases?
The answer is no, but it sounds like a good idea.
Look at that.
I don't virtually think this is going to be a show quilt when I'm making quilts. Sometimes I do enter them in our Australian shows, but I'm not sort of consciously thinking of it as being a show quilt. It's more that I want to try something and see what happens. Yeah.
And thank you again. Thank you so much for this inspiring session, Anna Schroeder says. And I agree. This was wonderful. This was more than I expected to hear from you, Gloria, along with your gorgeous, wonderful family. Is everyone live close by to you?
Within about 3 hours.
Oh, that's not bad at all, considering.
No. It's good.
That's fabulous. Well, I want to take this time to thank everyone for spending this last 45 minutes to about an hour with us. And Gloria, thank you so much for getting up early. I know that you are struggling with your jet lag, having just come from the United States. So it's nice and early for you in the morning. Hope you've had your coffee. And I want to thank everyone else, all of you, for joining us on this webinar. Again, there were about 90 people here. So 90 people taking out an hour of your time today. We so appreciate you joining us always. And I want to thank everyone. And one last time, I want to let you know, Gloria will be with us May 6th through the 10th in Santa Fe. A special surprise is that she will be going to the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, added on to this, which is a special treat for those of us joining you in Santa Fe. And that's about it. So going forward, we will certainly hope to see you in Bar Harbor September 30th or October 4th. Check us out on Madeline Island School, MadelineArtSchool.com, or Gloria's website and her Instagram for more information about signing up for your workshops. Gloria, take care. Say hi to Tony for us. And it was wonderful seeing you again.
Lovely. See you in May. See you in May in person. Thank you.
Gloria. Take care. Stay well.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.